Hello children, today we are going to hear the story about Old MacDonald's farm. And there's Old MacDonald with all his animals. Let's see what it's all about. We're going to turn the pages carefully because books are very precious. So there's Old MacDonald sitting with his cat and his rooster. Old MacDonald had a farm, and it was a very noisy farm. There were the chicks who went beep, beep. There was the cockerel who went cock-a-doodle-oo, and the geese who went honk, honk, honk. There was also a lively brown colt on Old MacDonald's farm. A colt is a baby horse. And when the little brown colt heard the other animals making noises, he wanted to make a noise too. So he tried, and suddenly he said, "Neigh, neigh." Old MacDonald's turkeys were very beautiful and proud. They could spread their tails like big fans and say, "Gobble, gobble, 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 gobble." When the little woolly lambs went, "Bah, bah." Look at them. Look at the little lambs frolicking around, playing so happily in the fields. Of course, Old MacDonald had pigs too, and they liked to eat. When they were hungry, they squealed for their food. Oink, oink, oink. Look, they're very hungry. When Old MacDonald heard them, he knew it was their dinner time, and he came running to feed them. Old MacDonald loved all his animals very, very much, but they kept him so busy all the day that he scarcely had time for anything else. Oh, look, Old MacDonald is very tired. Of course, all the animals were busy too, especially in the autumn. While Old MacDonald was in the fields harvesting his crops, many of the animals on the farm were busy doing their own harvesting. And the busier they were, the noisier they were. The squirrels were busy gathering nuts and acorns for the winter ahead. "Chatter, chatter, 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 chatter," said the little squirrels. And there's Squirrel with Squirrel Nutkin and his friends, all collecting nuts for the winter. Even the goat was busy. It was his job to keep the grass cut near Old MacDonald's farm. All day long he'd nibble, 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 and he must have enjoyed doing it, because in between nibbles he'd say, "Neigh, neigh, neigh." Old MacDonald's donkeys were kept busy trotting backwards and forth, carting the wonderful things that they grew in the garden. They too must have enjoyed their work, because they always seemed to be laughing. "Ee-haw, ee-haw, ee-haw, ee-haw." There's the cat talking to the donkeys. In the building where Old MacDonald stored his supplies, his feed, his flour, and his grain, the puppies were very busy, romping and playing and getting into mischief. Bow, wow, wow, and then trying to get out. Often they had to hurry to try to clean up the dreadful mess that they had made before Old MacDonald could discover it and scold them. When they heard him coming, they would give quick little anxious barks. Woof, woof, woof. There was a pond on Old MacDonald's farm, a pretty pond with tall green reeds and big bulrushes growing on the banks, and water lilies floating on the surface. 2 green frogs lived in the pond. They had lived there for a long time, and they grew bigger and fatter and louder day by day. They hopped from pad to pad looking for insects who dared to come near. When they croaked to each other, they sounded like 2 foghorns. Grunk, grunk. Or should I say, there's a dragonfly, and there are the 2 frogs. Oh, the frogs didn't have the pond entirely to themselves. Old MacDonald had some ducks. They lived there too. Quack, 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 said the ducks, swimming and splashing in the water. And look, this one is looking for some food. I think he's got his bottom up in the air and he's got his head down in the water, trying to see what he can find to eat. Every day when the mother duck took her ducklings to the pond for their swimming lesson, the 2 frogs hopped over to watch. And when the ducks quacked and the frogs croaked, it was a racket such as you seldom have heard. They all made such a noise together. The cows spent their days in the pasture behind the big red barn, eating grass so that they could give fine, rich milk. When it was time for Old MacDonald to milk them, they would call out much louder than anyone else, "Moo! Moo!" The calves lived in their own little meadow. When they heard the cows calling, they wanted milk too, and they said, "Ma, ma, ma." Old MacDonald would come running to see what he could do. But there were times when Old MacDonald did not come running. He had other things to do. He would be driving to town in his old blue car, and it had a noise all of its own. It went chug, 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 chug as it bumped along into town. Old MacDonald went to town. When Old MacDonald went to town, he had things to buy and things to sell. He had stories to hear and stories to tell. There he is buying all these things. His dog is helping him. And there he's having a time to tell some stories. When he had done everything, he got into his blue car and the animals could hear it. Chug, 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 as Old MacDonald came back. There he is, coming back, and all the animals are coming to greet him. All the animals made as much noise as they could because they were so glad to have Old MacDonald back home. As soon as they heard him, the chicks peeped, the cockerels crowed, the geese honked, the colt neighed, the turkey gobbled, the pigs squealed, the donkeys brayed, the puppies barked, and the cows mooed. Old MacDonald liked all of these noises. He liked the buzz, buzz of the bees by day. He liked the hoot, hoot of the owls at night. And he liked the chirp, chirp, chirp of the birds all week long. But when Sunday afternoon came, and he had taken care of all the animals, he climbed into his hammock. He settled himself comfortably, and with his hat over his head, his eyes and his hands over his stomach, and he said, "Now, if you'll be quiet, I'd like to have a little snooze." And then all were very quiet and listened and listened. And pretty soon they heard old MacDonald going, Old MacDonald's fast asleep, with a dragonfly sitting on his head. And that, dear children, is the end of the story. Thank you for the fairy tale.